They say a parent's love is unconditional. For me, it was a contract torn to shreds the moment I opened my eyes to the world, and Damien was the only signature they ever treasured. I grew up in the shadow of my older brother in our comfortable suburban home in Lexington, Massachusetts. While other families celebrated their children's achievements equally, mine had a clear hierarchy that was never spoken but always felt. Damien was the golden child, the one whose every breath seemed to validate my parents' existence, while I was the afterthought, the one who learned early that love had to be earned through silence and acceptance. The first crack in my heart came when I was 12. It was Christmas morning, and the living room sparkled with carefully wrapped presents under our Fraser fir tree. Damien unwrapped a beautiful silver bracelet engraved with his name, the metal catching the morning light like captured starlight. My parents beamed as he held it up, their faces glowing with pride and affection. When my turn came, I found a thick, heavy dictionary waiting for me. The leather cover was cold under my small hands, and as I opened it, a handwritten note fell out. "You should learn to accept reality by reading this book, sweetheart." Even at 12, I understood the message. Damien got jewelry that proclaimed his worth to the world. I got a book that told me to lower my expectations. The pattern continued through middle school and into high school. When I won the state debate championship my junior year, standing on that stage with the trophy in my hands and scanning the auditorium for familiar faces, I found only empty seats where my parents should have been. They were at Damien's baseball practice instead, because as my mother later explained without a hint of irony, Damien needed our support for his tryouts. I drove myself home that day, the gold trophy sitting silently in the passenger seat, a witness to my invisible victory. The only person who saw me, truly saw me, was my grandmother Eleanor. She lived in a weathered cottage overlooking Marblehead Harbor, where the smell of salt air mixed with old books and lavender tea. While my parents fussed over Damien's every need, Grandmother Eleanor quietly taught me about compound interest, the power of patience, and what she called the strength found in silence. Her small living room, with its worn Persian rugs and walls lined with financial journals, became my sanctuary. "Wealth doesn't shout, darling," she would tell me as we sat watching the boats bob in the harbor. "It whispers, and those who listen carefully hold all the power." When Grandmother Eleanor passed away during my senior year of high school, I expected nothing. She had always been kind to me, but I assumed her modest savings would go to my parents or be divided equally among her grandchildren. Instead, her lawyer called me directly. $50,000 left entirely to me, with a simple note: "For the granddaughter who understands that true strength comes from within." Damien's reaction was immediate and predictable. "That's not fair," he whined to our parents, his voice taking on that petulant tone that had always gotten him what he wanted. "Nadia doesn't know how to manage money. She should split it with me. I'm the one with business sense." Our parents nodded along, as they always did with Damien's demands. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Nadia, your brother has a point. It would be generous of you to share with family." For the first time in my life, I said no. Not just no, but hell no. The money was mine. Grandmother Eleanor had chosen me specifically, and I would not be giving a single penny to the brother who had spent years treating me like I was invisible. My parents were shocked by my defiance, but the will was ironclad. That $50,000 became the seed of everything that would follow. While Damien coasted into an Ivy League school on our parents' dime, I earned a full scholarship to UMass Amherst. He lived in luxury, calling home for money whenever he wanted the latest gadgets or spring break trips. I worked 3 jobs to cover my living expenses, serving coffee at an all-night diner near the Connecticut River, tutoring struggling business students, and doing bookkeeping for small local businesses. My dorm room was cramped, and my car was a 15-year-old Honda Civic that coughed black smoke, but I was building something. The summer before my senior year, Damien visited me at UMass. He walked into my tiny off-campus apartment, taking in the second-hand furniture and bare walls with obvious disdain. "Still living in your little shell, I see," he said, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. "I guess some people just don't have ambition." His words stung, but they also lit a fire in me that would never go out. I graduated summa cum laude, with a degree in finance, and moved to New York City with my grandmother's money, carefully invested and growing. I started as an analyst at a mid-tier investment firm, worked 16-hour days, and slowly climbed the ladder. After 5 years, I had enough experience and capital to start my own hedge fund. I named it Vance Capital, after my grandmother's maiden name. While Damien bounced between jobs, always calling our parents for bailouts when his latest get-rich-quick scheme failed, I quietly built an empire. I lived modestly, driving the same reliable car and living in a small but elegant apartment in the Upper West Side. My clients trusted me because I was careful, methodical, and never took unnecessary risks. By the time I turned 32, Vance Capital managed over $200 million in assets, and my personal net worth had crossed the $13 million mark. I met Marcus at a contemporary art exhibition in Lower Manhattan. He was standing in front of a massive abstract painting, his brow furrowed in concentration. When I joined him, he turned and smiled. "I can't decide if this represents chaos or order," he said. "Maybe it's both," I replied. "Maybe that's the point." We talked for hours that night, about art and life and the strange ways that beauty emerges from struggle. Marcus was a successful architect, designing sustainable buildings that balanced form and function. But more than his professional success, I was drawn to his emotional intelligence. He seemed to see past my carefully constructed walls to the scars beneath. Over the months that followed, Marcus became my closest confidant. He was the first person I told about my family dynamics, about the years of feeling invisible and unworthy. He listened without judgment, his dark eyes full of understanding. "You can't live a divided life forever, Nadia," he told me one evening as we walked along the Hudson River. "Someday you're going to have to choose between the life you're hiding and the life you've built." That someday came during Thanksgiving of my 33rd year. Marcus and I had been together for 8 months, and he'd been gently encouraging me to reconnect with my family. Not because he thought they deserved it, but because he worried about the emotional toll of carrying so much resentment. Against my better judgment, I invited him home to Lexington for the holiday. The house looked exactly the same as when I'd left for college 15 years earlier, though Damien's brand new Audi sat in the driveway like a shiny monument to my parents' continued favoritism. Marcus and I were given the pull-out couch in the living room while Damien and his wife got the master guest suite. "Damien needs the space for his work," my mother explained without irony. "He's launching a new business venture." I bit my tongue and helped set the table, listening to my parents fawn over Damien's latest entrepreneurial idea, something about artisanal dog treats that was surely doomed to fail, like all his previous ventures. During dinner prep, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "At least Nadia seems stable," my father was saying. "Simple life, simple goals, not like Damien who dreams big." "She's always been content with less," my mother agreed. "It's probably for the best. Can you imagine if she had Damien's ambition? She'd just set herself up for disappointment." Their words cut deep, but they also crystallized something I'd been feeling for months. I was tired of hiding, tired of protecting their feelings at the expense of my own truth. After dinner, I stepped outside to take an important call about a major acquisition my fund was considering. The conversation involved moving around $30 million, and I kept my voice low as I discussed the details with my senior partners. I thought I was alone until I heard Damien's voice behind me. "Wow, data entry sure sounds lucrative these days, little sister." I turned to find him standing in the doorway, that same cruel smirk from our childhood plastered on his face. I ended the call and faced him. "What did you say?" Nothing. Just curious how someone in your line of work affords." He gestured vaguely at my outfit, my jewelry, the expensive rental car I'd driven up from the city. "I mean, unless you're dating some rich old guy." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. This was it, the moment Marcus had warned me about, the choice between the life I was hiding and the life I'd built. "I don't do data entry, Damien. I own an investment firm, and I've been very successful." His laugh was sharp and disbelieving. "Right, and I'm Warren Buffett." I pulled out my phone and showed him the Forbes article that had featured me 6 months earlier as one of the top female fund managers under 40. His face went white as he read my name, saw the photos of my office, learned about my $13 million net worth. "This is a joke," he said, but his voice was shaking. "You've been sitting on millions while mom and dad struggle with the mortgage? While they drained their retirement savings to help me buy my house?" The confrontation that followed brought our parents running. Soon the whole family was gathered in the living room, staring at my phone screen like it was showing them a UFO. My mother started crying. My father turned pale. And Damien kept alternating between fury and disbelief. "You selfish bitch." He finally exploded. "You let us think you were barely scraping by while you hoarded millions. Mom and dad have been eating ramen noodles to save money." That's when something inside me finally snapped. All the years of being overlooked, diminished, and treated like an afterthought came pouring out. "You want to talk about the past, Damien? Let's talk about the past. When I won the state science fair, you skipped my presentation to watch you hit fly balls. When I gave the valedictorian speech at high school graduation, you only filmed your own reaction, not me speaking. When I was working 3 jobs to pay for college, you were getting an allowance for spring break trips." My voice got stronger with each word. "You got new cars, new clothes, new opportunities handed to you on a silver platter. I got hand-me-downs and the constant message that I should be grateful for scraps. Yes, I made my own way. I had to. You never gave me any other choice." "You were always the smart one," my father said weakly. "We thought you could handle things on your own." Handle things? Or did you just find it easier to focus on the child who demanded attention? Damien cried, Damien complained, Damien needed, so you gave. I adapted. I stayed quiet. I made myself small so you could pour everything into him. Marcus stepped forward then, his hand finding mine. "From what I've seen, Nadia has given this family everything she had. Not her money, but her patience, her silence, and the space for everyone else to shine. Maybe it's time someone gave her the respect she's earned. I looked around at my family's shocked faces and made a decision that had been brewing for 33 years. I'm done being invisible. I'm done pretending to be less than I am to make you comfortable. And I'm done having this conversation. Marcus and I left that night. I didn't sleep. Neither did anyone else in the house, judging by the string of angry texts from Damien demanding his fair share of money I'd earned through my own blood, sweat, and tears. 2 weeks later, Damien called demanding a meeting. I agreed to see him at an upscale cafe in Back Bay, partly out of curiosity and partly because I wanted closure. He arrived looking haggard, his usual confidence replaced by something desperate. "Look, Nadia, I know things got heated, but we're family. You have an obligation to help." I sipped my coffee and studied him. An obligation? Like the obligation you had to include me? To treat me as an equal? To show up for my achievements? That's different. We were kids. We're not kids now, Damien. And every dollar I have represents a choice I made, a risk I took, a 16-hour day I worked while you were figuring out your next career change. He leaned forward, his voice taking on that wheedling tone I remembered from childhood. Mom and Dad are struggling. They mortgaged their retirement to help me, and now they're barely getting by. Then maybe you should help them. Get a job that pays more than minimum wage. Stop launching doomed businesses with their money. Be the son they invested everything in. His face flushed red. You're just going to sit there on your pile of money and watch our family suffer? I stood up, leaving a blank check on the table with a note I'd written beforehand. This is exactly what I owe you. Then I picked up my coffee and poured it slowly over his designer shirt. Enjoy the life Mom and Dad built for you, Damien. I'll be busy building my own empire. I walked away without looking back, my heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown to his reckoning. 6 months later, I established the Eleanor Vance Foundation, dedicated to helping young women from difficult family situations pursue careers in STEM and finance. The foundation grew quickly, attracting media attention and donors who appreciated our focus on empowering the overlooked and underestimated. Meanwhile, Damien's latest business venture collapsed spectacularly, leaving him deep in debt. Without my parents' retirement savings to bail him out again, he lost his house and had to move back in with them. They were forced to sell the Lexington house and downsize to a cramped condo in a less desirable area. Marcus and I bought a penthouse in Tribeca with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We hosted a fundraising gala for the foundation, inviting supporters, colleagues, and yes, my parents. They came, looking uncomfortable in their department store formal wear, and watched as speaker after speaker praised my vision, my generosity, and my business acumen. Damien wasn't invited. As the evening wound down, my parents approached me nervously. "We're proud of you," my mother said, her voice small. "We should have said that more when you were growing up." "You should have," I agreed, "but I'm not the same person who needed your approval anymore. I found my own way to matter." Standing with Marcus on our balcony later that night, looking out at the glittering lights of Manhattan, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete peace with who I was and what I'd built. "No regrets?" Marcus asked, his arm around my waist. "About cutting them off?" "None. About building this life?" "None." I looked down at the engagement ring he'd given me just hours before, during his speech at the gala. "I'm not looking for forgiveness anymore. I found something better. I found justice. The scars from my childhood didn't disappear, but they transformed into something beautiful. Like my grandmother always said, pressure creates diamonds. And I had become unbreakable, brilliant, and entirely my own. In the distance, the city hummed with possibility, and I knew that every light represented someone else's dream, someone else's struggle, someone else's chance to rise above the circumstances that tried to define them. Some of those dreamers would find their way to my foundation, and I would help them build their own empires, one overlooked daughter at a time. The contract I never signed had finally been torn up for good.